ocean capture is so close to what direct air capture does. Same fundamental ins and outs, but we use air contactors that already exist, the ocean. We use an absorbent that already exists, the ocean. We produce no byproducts. I believe our process will be more efficient from an energy perspective and ultimately cheaper.
Welcome to the Carbonsations podcast, where we speak to some of the leading figures in the emerging carbon industry. Our guest today is Steve Oldham, CEO of direct ocean capture company Captura. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on this show. It's a real pleasure to have you. And since it's still such a new space, we always like to get to know our guests a little bit better and how exactly they entered the carbon industry. So I'd love it if you could share with us more of what you used to do before Captura.
Sure, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be with you. So Captura is my second carbon removal company. I started in carbon removal in 2018 at Carbon Engineering, and I was the CEO there for 4 years before joining Captura. And before that, I actually worked in the satellite and space industry for best part of 20 years, putting up satellites, space robotics, robotics for brain surgery, and other interesting applications. So my path to carbon removals a little strange, but I'm glad I'm here.
Thank you. Switching from direct air capture to direct ocean capture seems like quite a bit of a shift. What inspired you to make the change?
I mean, I think the first thing to say is that I believe that, we need all forms of carbon removal. The problem is so large for what we need to address climate change. I think we need lots of different options. I think direct air capture is a very effective mechanism. It works best, in my opinion, in hubs where you have a significant concentration of direct air capture in a location where you have energy, you have sequestration, you have land available. That's a good solution. I'm really proud to have played, I think, a significant part in bringing Carbon Engineering's direct air capture solution all the way through to fruition. And the opportunity with Captura was the opportunity to bring another form of carbon removal through to fruition as well. Hopefully implement some of the lessons that I learned at Carbon Engineering, the things that went well, the things that went not so well, and bring those into a new domain. I think the ocean has huge potential as a carbon removal solution. So really, it's the opportunity to bring a second solution to the table that was appealing.
And can you share what ways your experience working at Carbon Engineering has helped or influenced your work at Captura so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different routes to try and bring a new company and a new technology through to fruition. At Carbon Engineering, direct air capture was not really seen as a viable solution when I joined Carbon Engineering. The likes of ourselves, Climeworks, Global Thermostat at the time, we had a lot of work to do to position direct air capture as feasible, to position carbon removal as a necessary element in the fight against climate change, and to advocate for the policies and the government support that direct air capture now enjoys. At the same time, I also spent a fairly significant amount of time looking at business models and what, in our opinion, made the most sense to bring this type of technology through. At Carbon Engineering, we partnered with Occidental, used their knowledge, their skill set, their balance sheet to build the first very large plant that's going on now in Texas. I see great benefit in that. We're doing the same at Captura. We're working with Equinor, EDP, Eni, Maersk, a variety of large companies to help us deploy. So I think a lot of the lessons come from how best to position in the market, what kind of business plan really allows you to get to deployment quickly, and have the feasibility of deploying at a massive scale. Because I'm a very strong believer, if CDR can't be done at really, really large scale, it's not worth doing. We need solutions that can do billions of tons of carbon removal, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, I will circle back to that a little bit later as far as scaling CDR goes. But before that, I'd like to learn more about how Captura removes CO2 exactly.
Sure. So it starts really with the first fundamental principle that I just described. If you can't do this technology at massive scale, then it's not worth doing. And Captura's approach is to use the ocean. So why use the ocean? Firstly, it's huge. It already exists. It has a demonstrated and well understood capability of removing CO2 from the atmosphere. Every time we emit CO2 as a planet into the atmosphere, the ocean absorbs about 30% of that CO2. And that creates a side effect which is not desirable, increasing ocean temperatures, ocean acidification. We see blanching of the coral reefs and other side effects that are not desirable. So the approach of Captura was to say, look, the ocean's really good at removing carbon from the atmosphere. It's already there. It's really big. Can we find a way to use that ocean capability without harming the ocean? And the answer is, yeah, we can. So Captura, basically, we take CO2 out of ocean water using only renewable electricity, nothing else. There are no absorbents, no chemicals, no additives whatsoever. We strip the CO2 out. We produce a stream of CO2 that can be sequestered geologically or in saline aquifers, mineralization, all the forms of sequestration that we know and understand. And we also produce a stream of decarbonized ocean water. That decarbonized ocean water then absorbs CO2 back from the atmosphere because we created an imbalance in the same way that the ocean absorbs CO2 from the atmosphere because we put CO2 into the air. It works the other way around too. If you take CO2 out of ocean water, you create room for the ocean to absorb from the atmosphere. That sounded like a lot, so I'm going to give a really simple analogy that I use a lot to explain this process. And the analogy is a can of soda. So when you have a can of soda, the people who make the can of soda put CO2 into it to make it fizzy because everybody likes a fizzy drink. When you open it and you pour it out and you leave it on the table and you come back half an hour later, it's gone flat. The reason it's gone flat, too much CO2 in the soda compared to the atmosphere. There has to be an equilibrium. So the atmosphere pulls the bubbles out of the soda. That's why you see the bubbles rising in champagne, beer, Coke, soda, whatever you like. So over time, the can of soda goes flat. We do the same thing. We take CO2 out, which creates an imbalance, and the atmosphere puts it back. So the upshot is a carbon removal technology that has no input material, just renewable energy, and produces no byproducts. We have no waste products to dispose of. We have no chemicals we need in our process from external sources.
This does sound like a much more harmless approach to treating the ocean compared to other solutions I know about out there. And from what I understand from people in the industry, ocean carbon removal is generally met with much opposition, both within communities as well as with policymakers. Would you say this is also your experience, even with Captura's benign approach?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there is correctly and understandably concern in the ocean community. As one group put it to me, we've already messed up the atmosphere. Let's not mess up the ocean too. So there are marine CDR solutions that add material to the ocean and effect drawdown that way. For example, you can put limestone or you can put alkalinity into the water. You can put additional kelp, seaweed, other material into the ocean to effect more drawdown. Those are all viable carbon removal solutions. But the ocean community has concerns that we don't know what the side effects of changing the ocean's characteristics are. Our process adds nothing to the ocean. And in fact, we expect to have a beneficial effect on the ocean. We take CO2 out faster than the atmosphere puts it back in. So you achieve localized deacidification with our solution. We are very focused on ocean health. Right now at our facility in Port of Los Angeles, we're actually growing mussels in the outflow from our plant to demonstrate that our outflow is completely benign. Oxygen levels, soluble solids, pH, alkalinity, all of these factors are absolutely safe. Mussels that are very sensitive to changes in ocean characteristics can quite happily thrive directly within our outflow. So ocean safety and health is absolutely paramount for us. We recognize that without that, we won't get social license. And we've briefed multiple ocean groups and environmental groups on our approach. And I think we've been well received.
And how are things looking on the side of policy? And what else needs to really be done to reach that massive scale of carbon removal that you spoke about?
So I think the first thing I would say is the direct air capture guys did a fantastic job in advocating for direct air capture and getting policy, especially in the United States. The DAC Hubs program, which offers up to 50% funding for plants, the 45Q tax credit. Just today, I think Canada implemented a 60% investment tax credit for direct air capture plants. It's all fantastic. It's great. For the DAC guys, I played my part in advocating for that. But there are more solutions for carbon removal than just DAC. Our process is effectively the same as direct air capture. Direct air capture uses a chemical absorbent and produces a stream of CO2, which can be geologically stored. We use the ocean as our absorbent, and we produce a stream of CO2 that can be geologically stored. There's really no difference between the two. So for us, a very strong focus is to be given the same opportunity and advantages that direct air capture companies have. And we don't have that today. We don't qualify for 45Q. We don't qualify for DAC Hubs. We don't qualify for the Canadian investment tax credit because they all identify DAC, direct air capture. They're not technology agnostic. I understand from a policy point of view that policymakers don't necessarily want to open the door to every single feasible solution for carbon removal, but ocean capture is so close to what direct air capture does. Same fundamental ins and outs, but we use air contactors that already exist, the ocean. We use an absorbent that already exists, the ocean. We produce no byproducts. I believe our process will be more efficient from an energy perspective and ultimately cheaper. But I can't compete against DAC companies if they're getting 50% of their costs covered by government.
In a perfect world, if ocean carbon removal would have the same kind of support, do you believe it could altogether replace all other types of CDR?
Oh, I would never advocate for that. We need lots of different solutions. Our process has negatives too. We need to be by the ocean. We have lots of land area that can be utilized for direct air capture. We have sequestration sites inland where you can perform direct air capture and sequester right where you are. However, not using the ocean, that covers 70% of the surface of the planet, absorbs 30% of all emissions already. It makes no sense. Why wouldn't we use this incredible natural solution, enhance it with technology, and bring another carbon removal solution to the table? It just makes a lot of sense.
Steve, as you've probably heard, another ocean CDR company, Running Tide, just recently shut down. And the reason for that was cited to be the lack of demand in the VCM. That's kind of bred plenty of speculation in the industry as to whether or not that's entirely true, or all sorts of things, up to even the company's choice of technology, which may have been too expensive. What are your thoughts on this whole story?
I mean, obviously, I don't know anything about the ins and outs of Running Tide's business. That's obviously a question to ask them. But with respect to the voluntary market, first of all, I've never liked the term voluntary market. I don't think that's sustainable. If I'm a financier and I'm looking at investing into businesses, if you tell the financier that your business is dependent on a voluntary market, that's a bit of a red flag. I think we need to move to a regulated market where governments are essentially telling companies or requiring companies to get to net zero, and that creates a market by regulation. At the moment, massive credit to the companies that are doing this. The Frontiers, the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Next Gen, and other companies like that are seeding the market and creating near-term opportunities for companies like ours and others in the industry, and that's fantastic. At Captura, we've benefited from that. We have a Frontier contract. We're one of the 20 finalists for X Prize. These are wonderful early stage support mechanisms for companies like ours. But that's not going to get us to billions of tons of carbon removal. So I would agree with the statement that the voluntary markets aren't moving fast enough. But the way I would say it is the time of the voluntary markets needs to finish very soon. And they need to be replaced with regulated markets where governments require companies operating within their jurisdictions to get to net zero, because those companies themselves have signed up to COP mandates to achieve net zero by a certain time. At some point along this path, governments who said we will be net zero by year X have to start implementing hard policy, which forces that to happen. And that's the transition point, I think, for our industry. In the meantime, the voluntary market hopefully is large enough to allow companies like ours and others to develop their solutions and demonstrate that they can be deployed at massive scale. And that's on us. That's our responsibility to show that. So I think it's correct. The voluntary market is not big enough, but its very existence is absolutely essential for companies like ours. And let's move to a regulated market as soon as we can.
So with that in mind, how do you see the future of ocean carbon removal developing in the years leading up to 2030?
How do I see Captura continue? So
Captura and ocean carbon removal in general.
Yeah, so I think if I speak wider first to ocean carbon removal needs to demonstrate that it's cost effective and is a safe and viable form of carbon removal with social license. So I think for companies like ours, we add nothing to the ocean, we take nothing from the ocean. The CO2 we take out is replaced. We don't change ocean water chemistry. We have a beneficial effect on the ocean. For us, it should be achievable to achieve social license. For others that add material to the ocean, I think they have to demonstrate that scientifically that's okay. So assuming that ocean carbon removal achieves those two things, and like I said, I think Captura can definitely lead the way with that, then in my view, it will become one of the largest scale solutions because of the inherent advantages. The ocean's already there. We don't have to build it. And as a result, it can be quite a compelling offering for any company, government that is looking at how to achieve net zero.
Thank you. Before we finish up, I'd like to circle back to Captura specifically and ask about the company's latest funding round, which totaled just over $45 million US, making it one of the highest Series A funding rounds for any carbon removal company. What can you tell us about this investment and what will it go towards?
Yeah, honestly, it's been fun doing the Series A. We started off with a much lower target amount. I think because of the credibility that the company has with our association with Caltech, we came out of Caltech in California. So I think people understand the science credibility our company has. I think myself, I have hopefully a positive reputation in the industry, and that allowed us to reach a variety of investors. So we pretty rapidly found that we were oversubscribed. We also found that our investor base just wanted us to go faster. Go as quickly as you can. We'll support you. Tell us what you need. So we've been able to grow our set of investors, add more funding. And essentially what the result of all of that Series A is we have a 2-year cash runway, which is a very healthy runway. We have our entire piloting program fully funded. At the end of that piloting program, we will have demonstrated all of our technology in operational environments. We'll have published our pathways. We'll have done our ocean health demonstrations to show that we have a benign effect on the ocean. And we'll be ready to start commercialization. Commercialization involves obviously building a first commercial plant. It involves getting offtake. I continue to believe, as I mentioned earlier on, that getting government policy support, which means that ocean capture is no worse off compared to other solutions like direct air capture. It's hard for us to compete in the market when a direct air capture company gets 50% of its capital costs paid for by the government and $180 tax credit per ton of CO2. That makes it hard for us to compete. So if we succeed with the policy and show that ocean capture is just as viable as direct air capture, just as attractive, if not more so, then I think you'll see Captura building commercial plants probably 2026 with our technology fully proven, and we have our funding to take us to that point. So, look for a Series B towards the end of 2025, early 2026, and hopefully we'll grow from there.
Excellent. And as a follow-up, are there any more near-term upcoming announcements or exciting developments that you're ready to share with us?
Yeah, we announced our pilot program with Equinor at Kårstø, which is on the west coast of Norway. That's a really important program for us because we're demonstrating the ability of our technology to work within an operating plant that already is there. So, of course, there are all kinds of standards and safety mechanisms in place at that plant that we have to adhere to. So, this is not demonstrating our technology in our own backyard. We're going into one of the most sophisticated processing plants in the world and putting our pilot in there. We are working with 2 or 3 other entities that have expressed interest in doing pilots. So we hope to do some pilots in other geographies as well. One of the things that I think is maybe not unique to Captura, but certainly a focus of ours, is the relationship between carbon removal and renewable electricity or energy. We often hear a lot of questions about how energy efficient are carbon removal technologies. At Captura, one of our main focus areas has been to show that we can operate with intermittent renewable electricity. Such a large characteristic of renewable electricity is the peaks and flows. When the sun shines, when the wind blows, you produce energy, but there may or may not be a market at that moment in time. So our technology works very closely. We can power up and down very rapidly. We can store excess energy in the form of acid and base as part of the process that we use. So when the energy is available, we can utilize the energy to make our most energy-intensive process run all the time and store the result. And then the rest of the plant runs on a much lower energy need. We can power up and down very quickly. So as a result of that, I think we're highly compatible with the renewable energy sector. And one of the things that we anticipate doing over the next 12 months is working with the renewable energy sector to model that, to demonstrate that, because that helps them too. That sector wants to build plants. And the question will always come up from the economists and the financiers, what are you doing with the energy if there's no local market? Are you storing it? Are you transmitting it? What are you doing? And we offer a solution. So I'm quite excited by the potential of our work with the renewable energy sector.
Excellent. Steve, this has been such a tremendously insightful conversation. I love the opportunity to speak to you about the ocean's power to remove CO2 and how we can use it to mitigate the climate crisis. It was wonderful to speak to you, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Great. Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Carbonsations podcast and would like to hear more conversations like this, please be sure to subscribe. We really appreciate the support.